Well, thank you guys so much for having me today. I understand we want to wrap up by, I think, 1:15-ish. So we have plenty of time to talk about this really important topic about time management, which is something that I already talk a lot to ASHRAE chapters about around the world, and now remote work strategies, which is more important than ever. So to kick things off, I know that I was already introduced, but there's a picture and there's me, and I'm actually wearing the same shirt, so you guys get like the full the full view here. I do have a mechanical engineering degree from UCF, and now I'm working on marketing, business consulting, and education for small businesses in the HVAC industry. I've been a part of ASHRAE since 2007, and now I'm an ASHRAE Distinguished Lecturer. And for those of you that don't know too much about the Distinguished Lecturer Program, it is a society-wide program. It's brought to you by the society level Chapter Technology Transfer Committee, which you have one at your chapter, but there's a society level one as well. And under normal circumstances, the purpose of the committee is to spread the love of speakers on specific topics that you might not have access to in your chapter area. There's experts in ASHRAE all over the world, and as a part of the DL program, we're able to send those speakers to chapters, across the country or across the globe. So I've spoken at, I think, over 30 or 40 different ASHRAE chapters. People always ask me, what are the coolest places you've been? And I've had some really interesting experiences as an ASHRAE DL. I've spoken this year in Portugal. I spoke at Fogo de Chao, like meeting with the guys with the swords, like right in front of my face as I was speaking. So it's been really fun and really great to meet people from all over. But that's just an overview of the DL program. I have the link here on the screen if you have more questions about it, about what it is and who I am. So today we are going to cover about how you can work effectively while you're working remote, and at the same time, how you can manage your time successfully. And of course, to get through another day. I feel like everybody is struggling right now, and our challenges are a little different today than they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So things are changing. Normally, when I give this presentation, the number one goal I say is I want you to be able to do more in the same amount of time that you're putting in right now. There's no point to me of working longer hours to get some level of effectiveness or productivity. So the goal usually is, how can we make you more efficient, more effective? How can we optimize your productivity so that you're able to accomplish more in less time? But given the current circumstances, I think what we all need is to just feel some sense of normalcy and feel like you're actually making progress on your projects. I know for me and a lot of my clients, work has not stopped, deadlines have not changed, and it's a real challenge for everyone. So today we're just going to try to focus on how you can start to feel productive given these circumstances. Now, I know that a webinar is a different format for a lot of people, and so I wanted to give some quick tips or just some quick overviews. Like I mentioned, I call this the captain's report because I used to travel so frequently that, this is like what the pilot says at the beginning of the flight. So the presentation will last about 45 minutes. I am going to have opportunities and stopping points for you to ask questions. And as Michael said, if you will just please type in your questions, we will kind of look at those and try to answer what we can midway through and then after as well. The slides are made available to you. I see the link has already been dropped in there if you want to look at the slides, but I hope that you don't go download them right now. Just stay with me for this presentation and then do it afterwards. And then how to get the most out of this webinar. If you can, take your cell phone and make sure that you've got it on do not disturb, which means you're not going to be getting all those pings and notifications. You can see me, but I can't see you, and that kind of gives some weird non-accountability of the ability to pay attention, right? So just to kind of help yourself focus, I encourage you to turn your phone on Do Not Disturb. And if you can, put on headphones like I have. Nobody's talking to me, but I find that listening to something with headphones and having kind of that direct volume in your ear is really helpful for focus. Try not to multitask during this webinar if you can. And in fact, I recommend a physical notebook if you want to take notes. I always keep one. I work remotely 100% of the time. So I find that a paper notebook during something like a webinar is much less distracting than like if you're taking notes on a computer and then trying, you get like a notification about something else and it's just distracting. So I highly recommend if you can take this moment to find yourself a paper notebook. Now, another thing that I'm going to do to help you stay engaged during this presentation is use a polling tool called Poll Everywhere. So to join my polling tool, please open up your phone that is already on Do Not Disturb and go to your text messages and message the number 37607 and text my name, Pam Duffy, into the actual message. So go ahead and do that. The phone number is 37607 and text my name, Pam Duffy. What you'll get back is a little text back that says that you've like joined Pam's meeting room. Make sure that you don't put any spaces or anything in my name when you text it, all one word. So we're going to test this. If you haven't joined yet, don't worry, you'll have an opportunity anytime throughout. So now just respond to that same line of messaging, the letter A, B, or C, to tell me how has your day been so far. If it's been fantastic, enter A. If it's been fine, enter B. Or if you're having a rough day or maybe a rough week, you can enter C. So all the answers to this poll and all the polls throughout this presentation are anonymous. So I have not captured your information. That's always a concern. Okay, good. Okay, so we have a good contingency of people that are having a great day. So that's good. But most people are just having an average day, and a few people are not having that good of a day. I understand. I've had a rough day already this week, so I totally get where you're coming from. Okay, so now everybody knows how the tool works. So now I have another question. What's your current work situation right now? Are you currently working from an office? If so, respond A. If you've been working from home for less than a week, respond B. If you've been working from home for more than a week already, hit C. And if you normally work from home or work remotely, that's like your normal MO, respond D. Okay. Okay. Well, okay, nobody is working from their office. So I think that's good. I think that's in line with our ordinances and guidance from local governments. So that's good. But we have a good majority of people that have been working from home now for more than a week, and some of us that are new entries, and then another good contingency that have all been working remotely already. So I fall into group D, like I said, and even though I normally work remotely, I am finding my own challenges with productivity and time management that are different than before. Most specifically, it's been just this onslaught of information and activity that wasn't there before that I'm finding a little bit more challenging than the normal days. So this is good to know. Okay, so if you're here, it's either because you love ASHRAE and you join ASHRAE meetings no matter what, or it's because you're looking for tips and strategies. And I find that even now, even given everything that's going on, most people, when they talk about struggling to manage their time, they're in one of three categories. So the first category of people are people that just feel totally overwhelmed and swamped with the amount of things to do. And every time you finish one thing, there's like something else. There's like 5 more things that come up on your list. It's like that never-ending bowl of pasta, right? It just keeps going. The second challenge that I see right now, this is probably the biggest one, are people that are either procrastinating or they're just completely distracted by everything that's going on. And it's just hard to find that focus. And then the third group of people that I see are perfectionists. So this is really common amongst engineers to be absolute perfectionists about everything, normally, or even these days right now, even when you don't have the tools or all the people or all the things you need to do your work effectively. Now, no matter where you fall in these categories, or it's many or all of them, they all lead to being ineffective. And when you're an ineffective worker, you can miss deadlines. Your quality of work overall is not as good. You're constantly apologizing to people for getting things late or dropping balls. And for those of us that recognize that we're being ineffective, what do? What's the solution? You just keep working. You just keep working. For those of us that get to 5 p.m. and you think like, well, what the heck did I do today? I was supposed to do task X and I still haven't done it. And then you keep working and it's 7 p.m. and you still haven't done it. And you keep working until 9 p.m. You still haven't done it. You say, no worries. I'll get up early on Saturday and I'll do it. And this inability to rest and relax, actually, research has shown, has made us less productive and less effective at doing our job during normal hours. Not only that, it'll lead to burnout, which I feel like it's a very real possibility for everyone. And especially if you're new to working remotely, burnout is something you really have to work hard to prevent. So this is what we're going to try to tackle today. I think that a lot of engineers don't think about managing their time. But there's a lot of benefits of managing your time. Not only can you accomplish more, you can get ahead. I think another thing to me that is really important is that you can stop feeling guilty for when you're not working. If you're able to effectively manage your time and really be productive during working hours, you can feel good about stepping away from your work and spending time with your family or just spending time by yourself, taking a bath or a shower or whatever it is you need to do just to relax and rejuvenate, and you won't feel guilty during that time. You can feel more satisfied with the overall job you've done. You meet your long-term project goals, which I think a lot of people struggle with. It's easy to do short-term goals like open all the emails in your inbox, and it's harder to work on those bigger, meatier long-term projects. And number 6 is taking time to relax and refresh, which is so incredibly important to your overall productivity day to day, especially sleep. I talked about this in another presentation, but research has shown the number 1 thing that you can do for your productivity is to have good sleep. So prioritize that. I have 4 areas I want to talk about today: focus, prioritize, plan, and execute. So in the focus section, we're going to talk about how to eliminate distractions and how to get you zoned in so that you can work effectively. In the prioritize section, we're going to talk about how you make your to-do list and how you decide what to do first on that to-do list. In the third section, plan, I want to talk about how to design your workday and how to schedule your work. And then in the fourth section, execute. Great, we have a to-do list, we have a plan for how to do it, we're focused on getting it done. Now, how do I actually get it done? That's the execute section. And specifically in regards to remote work, I have little tips in all of these sections, but a lot of that falls into the execution section. So just to give you a heads up. So now what I want to hear from you is, of these 4 areas, which is the one do you think you struggle with the most? Do you struggle most with procrastinating, focusing, getting distracted by fires that pop up all the time? Do you struggle with prioritizing, like even having a list, like you're just, whatever the shiny thing is, that's what you're dealing with? Do you struggle with planning out your time? You just kind of attack things as they come? Or do you struggle with actually just getting things done? So I have a poll here, A, B, C, or D. Which item you feel like you struggle the most with, like right now? Okay. So this is pretty typical. It's funny, I'm not necessarily a time management expert, but I am a super time management nerd. And I find that so many of the books and materials out there for time management focus on the prioritizing and especially this planning section. But I find that most people actually struggle with focusing, like you mentioned here, which is why a huge part of my presentation covers focusing. So we'll start with focusing, but it's good that it seems like everybody in this group has problems with the other areas too. So don't worry, we're focusing on everything, but I will be spending plenty of time on the focus section. So here we go. Um, the last thing I want to mention before totally diving in is that not everything works for everyone. So I'm just throwing out every tip that I have for you guys. Take what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then don't feel like you need to do it. I'm not here to mandate or dictate, that you have to start a bullet journal or that you absolutely must use, email to manage your tasks. So whatever works for you in terms of tools, you have to decide how that aligns with your values, your energy levels, your ambition, what is going on in your household right now, what's going on for you personally right now. Everything is different for different people. So take what works and what doesn't, and just make that decision for yourself. So let's talk about focusing. The first thing I want to talk about is that multitasking is a myth. I feel like when I was younger, multitasking was like the big buzzword in business, and it was something that everyone had to learn to do. In fact, you might be multitasking if you're trying to watch this webinar while cleaning out your email inbox or something similar. But we know research has shown that multitasking is a total myth. And here's a really easy and fun way to demonstrate. So here's something you can do with your spouse or with your kids after this webinar. It's a little tool. You just do 2 straight lines on a piece of paper, and you say, on the first line, I want you to write the words, I am a great multitasker. And on the second line, I want you to write the numbers 1 through 20. You take a timer and you time how long this activity takes. Then you do it again, do a second version of this, and you say, okay, I want you to do the same thing, except this time I want you to alternate between the 2 lines. So write the sentence, I'm a great multitasker on the top line and 1 through 20 on the second line. And what you'll find is even if somebody's trying to speed through this and go back and forth, you'll see that people start making errors and mistakes. It's not as clean. The handwriting or the numbers won't be as clean on line to line. And on top of that, it's going to take longer. So the ability to multitask, it's not a skill. It's actually a start-stop method that actually slows us down and doesn't make us output better work. So the thing that everybody needs to learn and accept is that you need to train yourself to single track. And that's really difficult these days because if you are, let's say, working from home right now, you probably have so many different distractions and there's so many modes of communications right now. Let's just talk about the work things, right? You've got your phone, you've got your email, you've got chat, you've got probably a whiteboard or post-it notes or like other things that are just going on visually and things that are pinging you all the time. Then on top of that, working remotely has its own challenges, especially if you have children in your home. I don't have children, but I have a dog and she likes to come in here and like paw at me and stuff. So you got those distractions. You've got probably packages being delivered, you've got all sorts of different things going on that are causing you to lose your focus. So this is really important for us to figure out how can we single track so that you can get what you need to get done in the quickest amount of time at the highest quality, and try to eliminate those distractions the best we can, or at least temper them. So for remote work, the biggest thing that you can do to focus is to get your mind in the right place. So that starts with creating a physical workspace, and it doesn't have to be an office. I am very, blessed, I guess, to have an office, a specific room in my house where I can go and shut the door, and this is my office, and I can leave it. If you don't have like an office room, pick somewhere that it becomes your space. And I'm talking even like a corner. Wherever you choose needs to be different from, if possible, from where you do other activities. So your couch, for example, is probably not a great spot to choose to work from home because you probably relax there as well. And your brain associates couch with relaxing. So what you need is just a spot, just a little corner or a table or chair somewhere where you say, this is my work space. Then that allows you to kind of get up and leave at the end of the day or on breaks. And that really helps with separating and creating a work-life balance. The second thing is to make sure you get ready in the morning. Now, this is not going to be the same as getting ready for going into the office, right? One thing I love about working from home is that I almost never have to wear shoes. And for whatever reason, that's something that really bothers me about going places is putting on shoes. So I love being barefoot, but I still take a shower, get dressed, put on makeup, do the whole thing. And that really kind of creates a sense of normalcy that you might be looking for. It's also really important to schedule outdoor time. That could be as simple as making sure you go outside to get the mail every single day or taking a walk around the block. I know some people that literally get ready for work and go outside, walk around the block, and then when they come inside, they go straight to work. So it's almost like their commute. They do the same thing at the end of the day. Or you can say, you're always going to take coffee at 10 a.m. outside, or you're always going to eat lunch outside or something, but don't let yourself get cooped up inside your house. It's really important, just not only for your mental freshness, but as you know, ventilation is really important and having fresh air, as we know. Making sure that your workspace remains clean and decluttered. I have a tendency to just like drop papers all over my desk. So my method is once a day to just sweep it all off into one big, box that I have and make sure that it's clean and not distracting. And then the last thing is to plan for interruptions. Again, everybody has different distractions right now. Your kids, your pets, your spouse, there could be all sorts of stuff happening in your house right now. So the best thing that you can do is decide, how are you going to handle those distractions? Is there a way that if you have kids, you can coordinate your calendars with your partner to make sure that, everybody gets the working time that they need? Or is there a way that you can have a very serious conversation with your kids about their school time and your work time, etc. The thing is that we know that interruptions are going to happen, especially during remote work. So decide how you will handle those and make a plan for it. Now, in terms of your phone, something that I find really effective are tools like screen time. And what I like about it as an engineer is that it gives you all this data. I love this particular screen here where it tells you how many times I picked up my phone in a specific day. So like the most pickups from the phone just resting on a table to picking it up is almost 100 times, which is crazy. That means I've been interrupted from doing whatever I was doing. Like my phone was inactive and then I was interrupted 100 times, which is pretty crazy. And then it'll tell you, what app did you use the most after you picked up your phone. It'll tell you how many notifications you get per day. I get 88, which is pretty low. The average amount of notifications for the average person is somewhere around 300. So that's just gives you some data there. And then you can also get these reports like how much screen time you had on your phone. I really believe in this mantra that you manage what you monitor. For example, if you check your bank account frequently, it's pretty likely that you're going to manage your finances, at least keep tabs on them, right? If you weigh in every single day, it's pretty likely that you'll make healthier choices. So similarly, if you monitor your screen time, it's likely that you will spend less and find ways to be less distracted. So I highly recommend this. Something that I do is I like to set arbitrary goals. So for example, a goal here could be that I want to spend less than 3 hours of screen time on my phone every single day. And I know exactly what the data is because I can dig into my phone and grab that data. So I think it's helpful to just look at this, make sure you're monitoring it, and once you have this information, then you can try to make fixes. There have been some really good articles on how to make your phone work for you than work against you. So, for example, you can take 30 minutes to modify your phone settings. And I will guarantee you, if you spend 30 minutes today modifying your phone settings, you will get that 30 minutes back this week. No problem. It's really, truly amazing how these smartphone user interfaces were designed. They were designed with the same research in mind as slot machines. So big red dots for your banners, colorful apps, things that, stand out to you and blink at you and things like that. It's all been the same. So the nice thing is that you can turn all that off. So as I mentioned, you can monitor your phone usage and set goals. You can turn off these little like badges and things. You can still have 13,000 emails, but it doesn't have to be blinking you in the face. You can turn on Do Not Disturb. I highly recommend Do Not Disturb. It's like the 2020 equivalent of turning off your phone itself in like 2004. So I know that nobody wants to actually turn off their phone, but using Do Not Disturb, especially while you're working or in meetings, I think is critical. You can also put your phone out of sight. This is what I consider like the nuclear option. If you have a really, really important deadline and you are really trying to focus hard on work, take your phone, put it somewhere else in the house. If you've got a watch or something that buzzes you, take it off, put it somewhere else. It is amazing how much you will be able to focus with your phone being somewhere else in the space. The last thing that I recommend is choosing a time to return phone calls. It's inevitable that you'll miss calls, but if you keep a pad of paper next to you, you can just keep your tabs on who you need to call back, and then every day, for me, it's every day at 10 a.m. It's 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. for me. I return all the phone calls I've received throughout the day that I couldn't pick up. I find that that's much better than just arbitrarily returning calls whenever you get a chance to. So, okay, another distraction that people have is email. And a lot of the tips that I just gave in the phone section are going to be mirrored over here in email world. But I do have some specific tips to eliminate email distractions. One is to turn off new email notifications. That goes for your phone and that goes for your actual desktop as well. So what I'm talking about here are the little like pop-ups that come up like, ding, like you have a new email from David. So what's important, it's not so important that David has sent you an email. I mean, maybe if he's your boss, then that's very critical. But what happens is you'll be knee deep into, hyper focused into something, and then you'll see that and, totally change your focus. And then it takes so much time for you to get refocused and remember exactly what you were doing, especially if you're working in a drawing set. That's really, really hard to remember where you were and what exactly you were doing and what you've done so far. So I highly recommend, similar to the phone call tip I just gave, turning off your email notifications and then only checking email when you choose to check email. So when you choose to go to Outlook or Gmail to actually open up your inbox, or when you choose to go to the app on your phone, you have made the choice to check your email rather than something notifying you that email is there. I promise you won't miss too much. I haven't had email notifications for probably 6 years now, and I think a lot of people would find that I'm pretty responsive in my emails. Uh, but this is just such a huge distraction to have those email notifications. So make sure you turn those off. Close email during working blocks. If you have your email turned off already, like the notifications turned off, then you can just have it minimized. Automate your emails. So a lot of people like to spend time filing away their emails. Personally, I think this is a huge waste of time. This is what I call a productive distraction. In other words, you feel productive because you're like putting things into file folders. But what value are you actually getting out of that? Like, is it really the most valuable thing that you could be spending your time on right now? So I recommend automating. If you insist on having folders in your email, then set up some rules. If you don't know how to do it, one of your coworkers definitely knows how to do it, so that when emails come in, they just automatically filter into your folders. You can also use your inbox as a sorting zone. So this is how I handle my email. Consider if you go to your mailbox and you get like a huge pile of mail and you like bring it back inside. Most people will sort it, right? Like here's the junk pile and here's the actual interesting pile. And then in your interesting pile, you have things that you open immediately and you're like, okay, that was interesting. Now I need to shred it or whatever. And then you have a second pile of the important stuff pile that's things that you need to do something with. So think about handling your email the same way that you would handle your physical mail. You've got kind of the stuff that comes in, it's not important, you can delete it immediately. You have the second set of stuff that you actually need to read. Okay, I read it, I'm going to archive it. And then the third set of things, which are things that I actually need to process. So for me, the things that I need to process, I put them in a folder called to process. That way it's out of my inbox. And then when I have a chunk of time to actually attack email, I go to the process folder and I start processing those emails. So just something to consider. That's a method that kind of goes along with the inbox zero method, if you're familiar with that. So yes, I mentioned here to stop organizing your emails and instead to use search. I can't tell you, especially engineers, how much time I see people like they're looking for an email and they're just clicking around in folders and they think, okay, what folder did I put that in? Did I put it in the project folder? Did I put it in the client folder? Did I put it in the ASHRAE folder? But that person is a client of mine, so what do I do? Just use search. I put every email that I'm finished with into an archive folder. I don't organize it at all. And then I just rely on the search function to find the email. So it's worked for me. I just think it's a big waste of time to be, organizing your folders if you're not automating already. Okay, the last one I want to talk about is chat, which for me has really taken an uptick in the last week. Here in Dallas, we just had a shelter in place on Monday and then on Tuesday for 2 counties that I live and work in. And now all of my different people that I'm working with are all using different chat clients. So now I have like Google Chats and Teams chats and Slack, and everything is just pinging from all different directions. So it should come at no surprise to you that I've got tips for chats as well, and they're all kind of the same, which is essentially use do not disturb. You don't need to be available with the little green symbol all the time. You can use do not disturb, use the little statuses if you have that option to indicate what you're working on, or tell people in your status, like, don't chat me right now, I'm working on XYZ. And people will respect that. And a lot of these chat platforms, do not disturb, will actually suppress the notifications from coming to you. The second thing I want to mention is to designate time for chit chat and meetings. Right now, more than ever, being social with people is really important. We don't have water cooler chat, we don't have coffee breaks, we don't have lunch out with our coworkers, but that doesn't mean that you should be chatting about it all day. So what I find to be really helpful is to designate specific times for those interactions. And if you're a manager, you should definitely be taking the lead on this, but still, I bet anybody on your team, if you were to say, hey, do you guys want to get together at 10:30 for just a quick 5-minute coffee break? Then that's a good time where you're catching up with everybody, even if it's just on chat and you're not doing that one-on-one with people all throughout the day, which can be really distracting and lose your focus from your work. The last thing I want to talk about, and this really falls into the execution portion, but I find that this is the #1 tip for focus, which is to use the Pomodoro method. So the Pomodoro method is based on the good old tomato timer. And the sequence goes like this. You pick a task that you want to do, and you set a timer for 25 minutes, and you work on that task and only that task for 25 minutes. Once the 25 minutes is up, you stop working, and ideally you get up and you take a 5-minute break. So you reset the timer for 5 minutes, go take a break. So that would be a great time, in my opinion. If you are working 25 minutes at your desktop, 5 minutes to go and check news, check social media, whatever you want to do on your phone, check in with whatever, go take a walk outside, 5 minutes, and then you come back and you start again, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. You do this 3 times in a row. Those are called 3 Pomodoros. And then at the end of the third or the fourth 25-minute block is when you take a longer 30-minute break. And this has been proven to significantly improve productivity. And the reason why it works is because it creates a sense of urgency that you maybe didn't have before. So when you have that timer ticking down in front of you, whether it's on your phone or on a watch, I use this website here called tomato-timer.com. I find that you get distracted and you kind of end up on this little tangent, and then you see that timer clicking down, you think, oh crap, I've got to get back on task. So it creates the sense of urgency, it helps you avoid distraction, and then most of all, it forces you into a break. It is very, very easy, whether you're remote working or you're in a normal office, to just blow through the day. And then that's why so many of us end up in the afternoon, like in a fog, like we're just totally mentally exhausted because we're not taking purposeful breaks throughout the day. So if you are struggling with focus, which it seemed like almost half of you are, this is something that you can try out right after this call this afternoon. So I highly recommend this website, tomato-timer.com. There's also Chrome extensions and other things you can get for this as well, or you just use whatever you have. Okay, so I'm going to take this moment for a quick break. If you guys have any questions or discussions on what we have talked about so far on focusing, I would love to hear. I would love to know what has worked for you to improve your focus during this time of increased distractions. And then I also am interested to hear about your opinion on productive distractions like organizing files or cleaning out a desk drawer or things like that. So Michael, are there any questions in the chat right now that I can answer?
No questions yet have come through.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do have a question. I wonder what if you have any suggestions for one of the things, even if I want to turn my email off, sometimes, you have to get back to your boss really quickly. So do you have any thoughts on, is there ways to filter, I guess, high priority emails when you're working on a big task? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what I do is I'll tell you what has worked for me, which has been when in my last job, I had a lot of different cross-functional team members that I was working with. And what I did was I made a list of, I called them VIPs, and I sorted my email by those VIPs every day. So I actually had a written list of, my number one VIP is this person, my second VIP is this person. And I had it posted like on a little post-it note above my computer. And when I would come in and have like a list of 40 emails, I would just sort by name and look for emails from this person first and then this person second. So um, that's been how I've done it in terms of prioritizing.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, and it looks like Roger Jones uses OneNote linked to Outlook emails to help him organize. That has worked well for him.
Yes, I see that. I have heard a lot about OneNote and Outlook. So good. Okay, well, I'll just keep on going. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in to this chat here. You can change the drop down to like just organizers and panelists, and we'll be able to see them. Okay, so we've talked a lot about focusing so far, and now I want to talk about prioritizing, which really has a lot more to do with creating your to-do list. So I have a question. So open up your phone again and to that little polling messaging string that you've got going and answer A, B, or C if you keep a singular to-do list, like one to-do list. If you do, answer A. If you don't, answer B. And if you feel questionable about it, answer C. Okay, answers to this poll are anonymous. I won't judge you. I'm gonna change to show the results. Yeah, okay. Oh wow, a lot of questionable people. This is surprising. I guess my guess, I would love to hear from some of the questionable people. So type in, I would love to know why you find this to be questionable. But my guess would be that maybe you actually have multiple to-do lists. Like maybe you actually have a list and but then you also have email and then you also have text messages and phone calls to respond to. So very, very interesting results here. Very interesting. So it will probably come as no surprise to you that I strongly, strongly recommend you have one singular to-do list. The problem is that the second that you make one to-do list, like things start cropping up and now suddenly you have 6 or 7 to-do lists again. I totally, totally get that. So I want to walk you through this process of creating a very effective to-do list. So the way that it works, and this process is from the book Getting Things Done, which I highly recommend. The very first thing that you need to do is do a brain dump. Now, most people I know, this is how you're feeling, especially today, especially this week. You just got like all this stuff in your brain of things that you need to do, things that are going on. It can be a lot to just have that manifesting in your brain. And then of course you've got all this other, actual emails and real things that you have to do. So I highly recommend a once a week brain dump. So what you do is you set a timer for 5 minutes and you think of everything you can and you number it on a list. So you start out with a totally blank piece of paper, even if you already have, like, I'm going to show you an example here. So even if you already have like a list, don't start with this. Open up to a totally blank page, set a timer for 5 minutes, and just start writing. Even if you think you're going to duplicate things that are on list, just start writing. Start writing everything that's on your mind. Now, if we had more time, I would actually have you do this activity, but I'll show you what it looks like. So 5 minutes, here's me writing down all my things. And you have your timer going, and about 2 or 3 minutes in to thinking of all the things that you need to do, you can't think of anything more else to add to your list, which is usually incredibly frustrating because you think I have so many things to do. How can I possibly only have 7 things to do? So the key is when you do this exercise to just let the clock keep running and just sit there and continue to mull on if there's anything else that you need to do that's not currently on your list. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find that you have additional things that you need to do. And usually, as you add things, like number 11 for me is that my friend Kristen had to cancel her wedding that was meant to be this weekend. So we were scheduling a virtual wedding reception. But as soon as I write that down on my list, now I need to remember I need to buy her a wedding present. So you find that you'll add things to your brain dump if you just let the clock keep running and just kind of keep adding things and let it go. So after you do your brain dump, now you're going to add it to everything else that you have. So walk around your house, your office, if you have a bag, like a work bag, collect all the loose papers you've got, business cards, receipts, just little notes, like little things you have, like tab, anything in your notebook that are loose papers. Then you want to review any previous calendar appointments. And what I mean by that is look back at the last week in your calendar and think if there were any action items you have outstanding from those meetings. Then you want to preview your calendar for the next week and see if you have anything you need to prep for those meetings. And then finally, you'll review your old tasks. And so you look at your old task list. So these are the 5 things that you need to do. And you're going to make one really massive list of tasks. This could be 60, 70 items long, right? That's totally fine. Don't panic. Then what you need to do is start translating and segmenting those tasks. And the way that we recommend that you do that is by creating an immediate next action list. And then the other things will probably fall into a waiting for, like you're waiting on something else so that you can do something, or you can throw it onto a someday maybe list, which is probably my favorite list of all time that I have. It just helps sometimes to like get things out of your brain and you know that you're never going to do them, but you can put them on a someday maybe list. So the thing that I find that people struggle with a lot is this immediate next action list. And I want to show you what that means. So here's that list I showed you previously of like my brain dump. Let's just say this was all the tasks that were on my list. Everything on here seems like when you first look at it, you're like, okay, I need to do that, I need to do that, X, Y, Z. But the key to actually getting yourself to be productive on these items is to turn the task into the immediate next action. So what this looks like, for example, item number 4, I want to set up my lighting for this webinar. That seems easy enough, but really the next action that I need to do is find an extension cord. I know this is a really silly and simple example, but it kind of demonstrates that every task you have on your list is going to have multiple subtasks, like as many as 30 or 40 subtasks. So what you need to do is switch everything from what the task is to what the next action is. Another reason that you do this is because when we are stressed and overwhelmed, as most of us are today, it's very easy for us to look at our to-do list and just choose the low-hanging fruit. So if you have a list of 10 items and they're all equally weighted in this numbered list, you just start looking for the easy things that you can just start nixing off, and it feels like you're being productive when in reality, for me, probably the most important thing on this list is number 8, update my client website. But that's a huge task that has 20 or 30 subtasks. So what's the very first thing, the very next thing that I need to do? So anytime you put together your to-do list, keep in mind what the next immediate action is for that list. Next thing I recommend, and this is kind of an advanced strategy, but you might look into the Covey matrix, which is essentially placing all those tasks on a grid of urgent, not urgent, important, and not important. And the way that I explain this is you want to keep your urgent and important box empty. That freaks everybody out because I know what you're thinking, that everything you have to do is urgent and important. But I want to challenge you to take your task list and put it on this grid and try to keep urgent and important empty. because then you'll be forced to put anything in that urgent and important category. You'll be forced to put it as either an urgent task or an important task. So try this out. I'm not going to go into too much details, and you guys have the slides, but I think this is a really interesting exercise for how to figure out what task to do first in your list. This is just an example. Again, it helps you identify your low-hanging fruit. You can see I've even marked in here like things I'm just totally going to abandon and not do. It just goes on my someday maybe list. You can tell that I didn't do a good job here of keeping this box empty. But what it does do is something that was, towards the middle of my list is now in this urgent and important area. And it's very clear that it's something I need to do like right now. So I find that prioritizing this can be really helpful, especially now if you weren't at a desk job technically, but now you are. If you were somebody that travels very frequently and now you're kind of stuck at a desk. Stuck, don't worry, don't mean it in a bad way. I'm usually stuck at a desk, but this can be really helpful for trying to figure out what you need to be doing and how to prioritize. So for to-do list tools, people always ask what tools there are. Now, some people do really well with paper, or a whiteboard can be really helpful, but there's a lot of digital tools out there. I know Roger already mentioned OneNote. Evernote is also a really good alternative. Just having a Word doc is good. Outlook tasks and Google Keep are both really good. I personally use the tool Todoist. I like it because it has priorities in there that you can add, and you can break everything up by project. And I also am able to have a team in my Todoist, so I can assign things to my assistant or to other people that I work with, and we're all working kind of in one space. So that's why I like Todoist. There's also Trello and Asana, which I've seen to be really effective for consulting engineering teams. So the thing is that whatever you use, it needs to be in front of your face really frequently. A to-do list doesn't work if it's not something that you keep open all the time. So that's something that you really need to consider when choosing a tool. And I don't think I've mentioned this so far, but you don't need to make all these changes at once. So choosing a to-do list tool can be like a really big decision, but try to do, just one thing at a time when you're implementing all these different tips. All right, now we're going to talk about planning. I'm going to try to speed through this section a little bit so that we can get on to some of the other remote working strategies that I have. But again, these slides will be available to you, so no worries if you feel like I'm going a little fast. And I'm happy to take any specific questions. But I do have
There was
another.
one. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Yeah,
There
go
was a
ahead.
question because you had mentioned Todoist and you have a team in there. We did get a question from Nick about whether you have any other strategies for coordinating work with a team. He uses Wunderlist, which can be a useful tool, but sometimes it's hard to get people to use that kind of thing consistently.
Yeah, I've heard Wunderlist is really awesome as well. I think this is true. I use another tool in Ashtray work called Basecamp. Um, so I think the biggest thing with teams and task tools is that everyone is committed to the platform. So you can't let people be an exception to the rule. And like if you want all, for example, if you want all the files to be in the tool, or you want everybody to make sure the links or the files are in the tool, don't allow somebody to like email it to the team. If you're the leader of the team, you need to be the one to email back and say, hey, I need you to post this to blah, 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 blah tool, whatever it is. Because it's like any rule in any game, right? Like as soon as you allow one person exception, like everybody else will just kind of like take advantage of that as well. So if you really want everybody to use the tool, you kind of have to be militant about it. And I find that that's especially true if you're managing a remote team.
Thank you. That was so helpful.
Cool. Okay, so planning. So this is the next question for your engagement tool here on your text message, which is whether or not you plan out your time. So specifically what I mean about this is, do you create a schedule for yourself every day, not or every week or every month or however you want to look at it? This is not so much like you have a calendar that people have put meetings on. I want to know if you proactively plan your time. So A for yes, B for no, or C for questionable, or maybe we can use C for like sometimes. All right, let me look here. Okay, wow. Looks like not many people actually schedule their time. Very, very interesting. I find that a lot of people let their schedule happen to them, like uh, especially if you're in the type of workplace where like people just put meetings on your calendar, like they're able to see your availability and then they just put meetings there, or like you just don't have a lot of opportunity to say like, no, that time doesn't work for me. Or you just kind of manage your schedule around those times. And I think that can be detrimental to our effectiveness. But then there's another piece that I think is really important for us all to remember, which is you need to accept that you have more to do than you have time to do it. So I think once you accept that, it's a really liberating concept, because a lot of people think that just having a to-do list is like enough, and they're just kind of churning their way through it. But you actually have to plan your time to make sure that you're able to accomplish what you set out to do. So I have a couple of strategies. One tip is to track your time. If you work in a consulting role, then you're probably already somewhat tracking your time. But if you're not, I highly, highly recommend you create a time log. And personally, productivity nerd here, I recommend a 24-hour time log. Like, I want to know on your time log what time you went to sleep, what time you woke up, how long it took you to shower, all that stuff. I want to know all of that, because you'll be amazed how much time you're wasting on little things here and there. So try to create a time log. I have one on that link. I have a sheet that you can use. Or if you want to be really advanced, you can use a time tracking app. This is the one that I use. It's called Timely. And there's a link in the resources for you guys. This one is actually a software that goes on my computer, and it tracks all of the different things that I have open, all the different files. And if I were to hover here on Gmail, I would be able to kind of open this up and see what specific emails I was working on at that time. So this really helps me figure out what the heck I was working on any given time. And again, I am always shocked at how much time I waste on, really composing an email for an extra 30 minutes when I should probably just call the person. So something to consider. I have 3 different strategies for time planning. The first one's I call math. The second one I call calculus. The third one I call engineering, which is the most advanced. So to go through it quickly, and again, you need to consider your energy throughout the day, what kind of preference for tasks that you have, etc. But if you want to go the simplistic method, which right now I feel like we all need to have a little grace with ourselves and realize that we might not be able to get as much done as we really want to this time of year. In this case, I suggest you choose one task per day, just one thing you really want to get done, and that's it. And if you accomplish that, you can call it a good day. I think it's really important for us to have bars right now for what's a good day. And I think just having one task, anything on your list, that can be really good. Another one that I call calculus is to block your time in chunks. So you've got like work, eat, play, sleep, let's just say. And you choose, I say you choose 2 MITs per day and 5 per week. And this is why I call it calculus, because that probably doesn't add up for you. But I think it's helpful to have that baseline of a good week is 5 MITs. a good day is 2 MITs. That way, you'll probably have some good days and maybe not some good days, but you really want to make sure that you get 5 most important tasks done per week. If you want to go really crazy with time planning, I call this calendar engineering, also known as time blocking. To give you an example, here's a calendar. You start with your must-haves, commute. Maybe none of us have that right now, but you have your lunchtime and you throw in your hardscape of your meetings. You try to group similar tasks, move meetings if you can, group things together the best you can, and then you start filling in your time. You always start with your most important tasks and adding in time blocks as necessary. Personally, I'm most effective in the mornings, so I always try to have my most important tasks in the mornings. That way, at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., I can already say it's been a good day. I schedule in time for emails and calls. I schedule in time for things like expense reports or admin. I also schedule in time to schedule time. Every Friday afternoon, I schedule my week for the next week. So again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. You get the idea, but this time blocking method is what works for me, but I've been doing it for many years. And right now it might be a little overwhelming for you. So at a minimum, planning your time into blocks of work time and non-work time is going to be huge for everyone right now. Okay, I am going to skip over these things so that we can get on to some of the execution area, because here I have some of my best remote working tips. So the first one is I want you every day to think about checking in and checking out with your boss or colleagues, or if you don't have a boss or colleagues like me, look for somebody else that's in a similar role that you can kind of serve as a check-in or check-out. Something that I really like is I call it a ta-da list, which is like, what did I do today? Some days it's hard to remember what you did if you're not really militant about having that most important thing. So I have a whiteboard that I keep where I'm like, when I accomplish something for the day, a task or a deliverable, I send out, I add it to my whiteboard, and that way I can feel like I've actually accomplished something. And then I report in to a small group of other business owners of the things that I've done today. So this can be a really good way of over communicating during this time of remote work. Another thing that you can do for teamwork is to be on camera as much as possible. And I know that a lot of people aren't super comfortable with it yet, but I think it's just really important to collaboration and keeping that social nature of our jobs up. When you do have a meeting or call, make sure that you give it your full attention, that you're not multitasking, over communicating with teams by doing the check-in, check-out. And then if you do these long discussions in chat messages, make sure that you recap them via email and you're adding on anybody auxiliary that might not have been in the chat. Sometimes those chat messages, they just get lost and hard to summarize, and go back and figure out why you made decisions. So I highly recommend re-summarizing them in email. And then finally, making sure that you're respectful of people's time. And I mean that in showing up to meetings on time, specifically, webinars like these, and making sure that you're on time and ready to go. For video calls, the best thing that you can do for video call is make sure that you've got good internet connection and that you've got a microphone that's very, very close to your mouth, and that you understand where mute is and everyone else understands where mute is. In fact, it might be helpful to have a meeting where you all just test out all of your sound and muting and unmuting and whatnot. For video, you want to make sure that you've got light in your face. I actually have lots of different lights in my office for video chatting purposes. You can clean your video camera. You'll be amazed how much of a difference that makes. So just take a microfiber cloth and just wipe it off. Make sure that you're aware of your surroundings, like what's behind you, and something that you can practice is actually looking at the camera, as I am doing right now. It is a little tough if you're used to looking at your screens. And then finally, like I said before, to use a notebook. Using a notebook instead of taking notes or actively working on a call will really help you stay engaged during the call. Now, if you're somebody that facilitates video calls or any kind of conference calls, it's your job to tell people when to mute and unmute and it's your job to make sure that everyone is engaged and has a chance to speak. So the way to do this is going one by one down the little list of attendees and checking in with people. And the best thing you can do is to use their names. Now, there's something that is very common on conference calls, which is fear of unmuting, and then everybody unmutes at the same time. So to avoid that fear of unmuting, which causes those like long drawn out pauses on a conference call, it helps to use people names like Brittany, what do you think about this? Or Ken, can you hear my sound okay? So those types of things will help with, not just like generally throwing out a question. Now, if you do a question like, do you guys all agree with the path that we're going here on this project? There's the everybody it meets at once and everyone's like, yes, 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 and then you get all the background noise all at once. So something that you can do is encourage people to use the chat box for like the thumbs up type agreements during the meeting. And then I always recommend that these days we start with like a whole team check-in, which is just, how is everybody doing? But again, it helps if you go person by person. So let's say I say, Dan, how are you doing? And then Dan responds, and then it's Dan's job to pick somebody else off the list. And then he'll say, Sarah, how are you doing? So it helps people stay engaged and figure out who's on the call, and everybody gets a chance to speak. So skip this on remote teams so that you guys have it. The last thing I just want to mention is to use all 5 senses when you're setting up your workspace. It just helps with your overall personal well-being and productivity. So sight, smell, feeling, hearing, and tasting. It's kind of like leaning into this whole remote working thing. Things that you can do at home that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do at the office. For example, I really love burning candles. Can't really do that in an office. People are sensitive to smells, but it's something you can do at home, and it makes working at home a lot more enjoyable, and therefore you'll be more productive. So with that, I am going to stop talking. I know that I've thrown a lot at you, but I would like to know if you've learned something applicable today. Just a simple question just for me to know that if my topic was applicable or not. I'll give you my email address on the next screen, so that if you have any questions or anything, you can follow up. And of course, I can take questions here. The slides are available to download at that website, along with all of the tools I mentioned, and then a lot of articles that I've referenced throughout the presentation will also be on that website for your viewing pleasure. So if you learned something applicable, please respond A, B for no, and C for questionable. I'll let that poll stay open. The form will be on the closing screen, so please do fill that out. That's really important to the chapter to get that feedback. My email is here, pam.duffy.ashray@gmail.com. You can email me anytime, or the slides and all of those resources. There's the link. It's also in your chat right now if you just want to pull it up, and I think they're going to email it out later as well, so you can download all these slides and have them into your reference. So thank you so much for having me. I can take any other questions that there are.
Pam, thank you so much. That was, I feel like I had several revelations as you were speaking. That was really helpful. And I wish we could have somehow figured out how to get all of us to chime in and laugh at. You had some good jokes throughout there too. So thank you for keeping it light, but also incredibly, incredibly informative. We do have one question. I think you sort of touched on it later, but maybe you could give a little more detail potentially. Matt asks, what do you do when someone sort of hijacks time on your calendar and kind of gets in, I guess, gets meetings in there, or is constantly reaching out to you?
Yes, I love this question. And every time I give this presentation, especially those time blocks, this comes up. This is like my secret tip. The tip is to make sure that you build in buffer. So think of it like a emergency savings account for your bank account, right? Like everybody should have some emergency savings so that when you get a flat tire or something comes up, like you can delve into that savings and it doesn't screw up your normal budget. So it's the same thing with time. You can sort of bank time or save time by a couple of things. but the one that I use is keeping a block of time open on my calendar with nothing in it. I don't schedule anything. I don't put any meetings there. I don't plan to do any work there at all. It's a 4 hour block of nothing. And so what happens is if my time block gets hijacked or a fire comes up and you got to deal with something, so you had something planned for a specific time and now you have to do something else. If you have that empty time block, now you can shift, whatever you were going to work on over to that time, or you can shift other things. But it just gives you a little bit of breathing room in your calendar to handle those last minute challenges. And of course, I find every single week, stuff pops up. I never don't have stuff to do during my empty time block, but that's how I handle it.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more question if you don't mind. So I know people will be sort of, I guess some of us will be taking a hack at taking on some of these strategies, and I think inevitably some of us won't get what we need to get done. So what is there anything you sort of tell yourself when you just didn't finish your list at the end of the day?
Yeah. So first, I love the to-do list. I think it's just so important that we have, like, I don't I don't mean this in the wrong way, but have a low bar. And it's okay to lower our expectations. And I feel like even if the only thing I did today was like I showed up to this webinar and I did it, or I took 5 notes, or I walked outside today. I mean, I feel like it's helpful just to literally write down one accomplishment. I also think, I talked a little bit about productive distractions, and I think now might be the time for us to feel like that's okay. If what you want to do and what keeps you sane right now is to completely reorganize your email inbox, great. If you want to scan in all the receipts for all your expense reports, like, do it. If you want to reorganize your office, great. I think like I said, having some grace with ourselves is going to be really important right now. And I think as long as you're on the same page with your management, I know that a lot of my clients, uh, they know that there's going to be non-productive time in a day. Like in a normal day where you might get in 8 hours, you might only get 4 or 6 or less. And so they're tracking those hours that are normally productive time, and they're tracking them as non-productive time. And it's not meant to be a bad thing. It's just meant to track that time and know what we're actually doing. And I think that's really important as well for management and leadership to kind of set some expectations without setting the bar too high, and recognizing that everybody's in a really difficult and stressful time right now. So I think it goes both ways, but I think as an individual, what we can do is celebrate our accomplishments, no matter how small they are, and that helps us keep going to the next day.
Thank you. That's so helpful.
Yeah.
Um, so are there any other questions, I guess, from our organizers, or just wanted to check on the line? I do want to take a moment to really thank you, Pam, for giving us all this great information, very tangible tips. Concrete advice has been so wonderful, and not only for that, but for being incredibly flexible and adjusting your presentation to talk about remote work strategies and doing this remotely. Feel like you're really walking the talk here, and we appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And I apologize that I had to speed through a few things to get through on time, but all of the slides are available, and if y'all have any questions, you just let me know.
Thank you. Alec, are there any closing remarks, presidential remarks you'd like to make? Just want to check in.
No, I just want to thank Pam again for her presentation, and let everyone know that we will be continuing in the same format for our April meeting as well. So keep an eye on our website and on your inbox for any announcements related to those.
Great. Thank you, Alec. And as Pam said, that there will be a survey form that pops up right after this webinar closes. If you could fill that out, that would be great. And it'll send out in an email as well tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. If we'll, I guess I'll see you all later, and I hope everyone stays well and stays safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael Ann. Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Michael Ann.